All right. Thanks, Jimena. So like Jimena said, welcome everybody. We're so happy to have you here. As you all know, because you signed up for this class, today Jessie is going to be teaching us how to paint some beautiful floral farmhouse pumpkins. So I'm really, really excited to see how these come along today. And like Jimena said, if you are so inspired by this class today and you want to post your own creations on social media, make sure to hashtag Make It With Michaels and Plaid Crafts. We're always looking under those hashtags and it inspires us to see what you guys are creating at home. What else was I going to say? Oh, that's right. If you have any questions throughout the class, make sure to comment them in the comment section and I can relay them over to Jessie so that she can get them answered in real time. If you have trouble keeping up with the pace of our class today, don't worry because this class is being recorded and it's going to be posted onto Michael's YouTube page and their web page in about 24 to 48 hours. So make sure to remember that. And I think without further ado, are you ready, Jess?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Awesome. Hey guys. Like Emma said, thanks so much for joining. My name is Jessie Jennings and I'm a content creator here at Plaid. And welcome. I'm so excited to be teaching you these really fun farmhouse floral pumpkins today. So I have the privilege of showing you guys how to paint these pumpkins. They were actually designed by my good friend, Kirsten Jones, which many of you may know from our Let's Paint, our Paint Night Lives on Mondays and also our crafting classes during the week. So I feel really lucky I get to teach this fun project to you guys. And I'm going to show you what supplies you'll need to do this class. So you can see here I have my pumpkins here. So any size pumpkin will work for this. This is a faux pumpkin, of course, but Michael's has these really awesome round ones. Any faux pumpkins you have at home, a lot of times each year I like to repaint my pumpkins from last year just to have a fresher look. So these are so handy for the holiday season. And then I have some brushes here. So I just have a nice mixture of flat brushes. So Craft Smart brushes are great. I have some FolkArt ones here, but the Craft Smart ones are sort of very similar as far as quality. So you guys can use those as well. But I have a few like 1/2-inch flats. I have a large 1-inch flat, and then I have a few 1/2-inch flats. But if you don't have more than one, don't worry about that. You can just use the 1/2-inch flat that you have or something that looks similar to this anyway. I just have a few because I want to keep my brush dry and I don't want to keep you guys waiting for me. I also have, of course, as always, our FolkArt acrylic paints. So the colors I'll be using are Wild Wasabi, Clover, Dutch Aqua, Pure Black, Yellow Ochre, and then I have Wicker White. So again, if you have similar colors, if you don't have these exact colors, you can just find something that's similar, or mix the colors to get something that's similar, or you can just use whatever colors you want, whatever colors match your home and your decor for fall. Absolutely feel free to substitute those colors in instead of the blues and golds we'll be using today. I have some palette paper for my paint, my paper towels, and water for cleaning my brushes. And that is it for today. So do we have any questions yet on supplies, Em?
No, not so far, Jess. I think we're all excited to paint along with you today.
Okay, great. So I'm going to show you guys, as you can see here in the project photo that I know you've all seen because you signed up, we have a couple different floral patterns going on with different color variations, but they're really the same motif. They're the same, shapes and things like that, just in different colors. So you can see this blue one is just a smaller version of these white roses and the larger one. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you how to paint this pattern here, because with all the elements in this pattern, you'll be able to paint these just using different colors, just because it would take very long for me to paint all three of these for you guys. That would be way longer than an hour. So I'm going to show you all of the things you need to know to paint this larger one, and then just swap out the colors to paint your smaller pumpkins to go with it. Okay. So I'm going to start with my big pumpkin here, and I'm going to grab some pure black. So any black acrylic paint is fine for this part. Got my pure black. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick up the largest of my flat brushes, which is a number 1 flat. And, whichever size you want to use for this is fine. I just like the larger size because, of course, I'm just going to be base coating it. So you want it to be big. And a lot of you may be confused about why we're painting our beautiful, pastel-y colored pumpkins black. And this is one of my friend Kirsten's favorite techniques to do. She is like the master of this. She uses a really unexpected color for the background, oftentimes black, and then paints her lighter colors over it, and you get really awesome dimension. And it kind of makes all of your shapes pop really well with that small amount of black coming through. So like I said, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna start base coating our entire pumpkin with pure black. And since we're using FolkArt acrylic paints, it'll be one coat and done, which is amazing. That's why these are my absolute favorite acrylic paints to use, because they have crazy good coverage. You can see how it's not even streaky. It's just going to be one coat. I hate having to give things multiple coats because I'm an impatient crafter. So this is definitely my favorite paint to use. And you want to paint all of the pumpkin, the whole thing, front, back, stem, all of it.
So Jess, Carolyn had a question. They wanted to know, are you using matte or satin paint right now?
That's a great question. So I am using our FolkArt acrylic matte, which is the original FolkArt formula. So this one will have a matte finish when it's done, which I really like for this whole like farmhouse florals look. But if you're using our FolkArt multi-surface paint, which is another great option for this project, that will have a satin finish and it really will be just as pretty. So it's kind of preference. So the original FolkArt formula for matte and then the multi-surface for satin. Either way is fine, but this one is going to be matte today.
And then while you're base coating that, Jess, Anne had a great question too that we get a lot here at Plaid. They wanted to know, can you use like real pumpkins?
Yeah, that is such a great question. So of course, real pumpkins are less expensive, but it's kind of like you have to weigh your options, because you can totally paint with acrylic paints on real pumpkins, just keeping in mind that they don't last very long. So I personally kind of hate the idea of spending all this time and effort to paint something really beautiful on a pumpkin only for it to kind of rot in just a few weeks. But you can paint it on a real pumpkin. If you were just doing a smaller version maybe and it was going to be a little quicker, you can absolutely do that. Like I said, I prefer the faux pumpkins because if I'm putting this much time and effort into making a project, I'd like to have it for more than just 1 year.
Totally. And the great thing is Michael's has a terrific selection of faux pumpkins to choose from.
They do. They have my favorite faux pumpkins. They have that really great, like big round shape. And then the smaller version too. I want to say it's like a 10-inch and then like a 6 or 5-inch or something, but they're my absolute favorite ones to craft on. And again, I'm just base coating. You guys can see the amazing coverage. Just be one coat, which is awesome.
I love that little technique that Kirsten does. It really brings a lot of contrast to her works of art.
I absolutely learned it from her painting the dark backgrounds with lighter colors on top. I had never seen that before, and it gives it such detail and such character. It makes everything look really dimensional, but it makes it super easy to do.
And then Marion had a good question too. They wanted to know, what if you buy a colored pumpkin that's not orange?
Either way, you can buy a black pumpkin. I think Michael sells black pumpkins. I know they definitely sell them at the store. You can totally buy a black pumpkin and then you don't have to worry about this step, but if it's a different color, that's fine too. If you're going to be following along with us, you would still paint it black, just like I'm doing here. I think Michael's has the orange ones and the white ones. So either one of those options would work great for this project. And I am going to paint the stem black as well. So if you're at that part and you're wondering, go ahead and paint the stem black. And if you guys are ahead of me, if you're crafting along and you have a smaller pumpkin, go ahead and when you're finished painting, grab your hair dryer or whatever you like to use to dry it and start drying your pumpkin, because I have some here that I'm going to switch to that are already dry, so I don't have to make you guys wait. But if you are crafting along, go ahead and start drying your pumpkin now. It should dry pretty quick. Goes on so well. Okay, so you want to make sure you get all the nooks and crannies, get the bottom and the top. Like I said, you want to make sure to paint the stem as well, so don't forget to do that. Because we're going to go ahead and continue our pattern all up the stem when we go to start painting our florals.
Whenever I paint pumpkins, I paint all of the sides and paint everything except for the stem. And then I don't know where to put my hands to paint my stem because my pumpkin is still wet.
So you basically have the exact problem that I'm having right now.
Yeah, you just have to like cross your fingers and paint it one-handed.
Just got to get messy, but you know what? Sometimes you get messy in crafts, and that is what makes it so fun.
Yeah, and that's the good thing about FolkArt paint is that it's non-toxic and it washes right off your hands.
Yes, exactly. A little soap and water, and it'll come right off your hands when you're done. Okay, so I am going to clean my brush off, and like I said, you guys, you want to make sure this is fully dry before you start on any of your other steps. So I am going to wash my brush off, and then I'm going to set this one aside because, like I said, I prepped a couple smaller ones. I painted them black, and you can see here, it'll show you guys how matte it dries. It's the exact same paint, but this one is already dry. So a super matte finish on these FolkArt acrylic paints. And I'm going to move him so I don't make a giant mess. So just one sec. Okay. So another like little tip that I like to give people when crafting is I always keep baby wipes on hand, especially if you're not crafting near a sink. Just when you get, stuff on your fingers like that and you don't want to spread it all over your project. I just like to have some baby wipes because it just makes things so much easier to clean up as you're going. Less cleanup at the end. Okay. All right, awesome guys. So now, like I said, I have these couple of pumpkins that I already base coated ahead of time and let them dry just so you guys wouldn't have to wait around for me. And I'm going to show you how to paint this really pretty blue pattern. So I know you guys like to see the finished. So I'll move him in so you can see him as we're painting. So we're going to be painting this really pretty blue pattern. And just as a reminder, this is the same pattern that's on these smaller pumpkins, or it contains the same elements, just different color variations. So we're doing a blue background with our white roses and yellow daisies. And then this one is just the same roses, but blue with a white background. So it's all the same thing. We just change up the colors so that it looks a little bit different.
And Jess, real quick, Carolyn had a great question. She said, how worried are you about total coverage with the black? Is it okay to have a little orange peeking through?
Yes, it totally is, because as you can see, we're going to be covering up the whole pumpkin with these other colors as well. So you will never see that orange coming through. So normally I would say, you can even actually see here, there's like slight brush strokes here and there. We just painted this in a hurry where it's coming through, but you won't see that at all. It's hard to see on camera, but in real life, you can kind of see a little bit of inconsistencies, and that just really doesn't matter for this project. Okay, cool. So now is the fun part. Now we're going to start painting our flowers onto our pumpkin. So again, it's kind of a unexpected way to paint it. A lot of times you would think you paint the background first and then dry and then paint your subject matter on top. But we're actually going to paint our flowers first and then paint the background around it. And that's how we get this really fun, loose, sort of vintage look to our pattern. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab one of my small flat brushes. This is a number 12 flat, but a 1/2 inch flat is great. A 1/4 inch flat will even be fine for this part. Something that just looks similar to this one. And I'm going to put some of my wicker white and some of my yellow ochre onto my palette paper. Okay. So I'm going to start by picking up a little bit. Again, I have my flat brush. I've got my pumpkin here. I'm going to pick up a little bit of my wicker white. And we're going to be doing a lot of what we call dry brushing. So what that means is we're just not going to put our brush in water very much, if at all. And that's because you want this really like chalky, dry, vintagey look. So I'm just going to pick up some paint. I haven't put my brush in any water. And then I'm going to wipe some of the paint off of my brush. So I'll hold it up so you guys can see. I hardly have any paint on my brush. Do you guys see that? The bristles just have the tiniest bit of white paint at the edge because we're going to be doing some dry brushing. So now I'll show you. I'm going to start painting my rose with my dry-ish paintbrush with a little bit of white in it. And I'm going to make some C's to the left and some C's to the right. So you'll see what I mean in just a second. Almost like little pumpkin shapes. I'm making C shapes to the right and to the left. So do you see what I mean by that? So I did some C's like the letter this way, and then some C's like the letter that way.
And how much paint do you have on your brush?
Very little, you guys. So can you see there? Hardly any. If you look at this camera, hardly any paint is on my brush. The drier, the better. You can always add more. When you're doing something like this, you can't take it off. So start with very little paint. And then if it's not enough, add a little more paint, but it's better to have too little than too much for something like this. So I'm going to keep doing this. I'm going to make sure I spread them out, but I'm going to keep doing sort of the base of my white roses. So I'm going to do another one here. I'm do some C's to the left. You can see it kind of looks chalkboardy because I don't have very much paint on my brush, and that's what we want. We're going to be doing some layering. We don't want to start off with completely opaque coverage because we're not going to get that painterly look that we want.
And Jessie, let me know if I'm getting ahead of you, but are you purposefully trying to start with your lightest color that you're going to include in your flower?
Yes, sort of.
Okay.
This is a very simple pattern. These are very simple flowers. We're gonna be doing kind of just like white and a color for each element of this design. So I'm starting off with the white right now, and then we're gonna add the color in later because the white, it's just easier so we can get all the white out of the way and then we'll add the color.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so another rose. So I'm gonna keep turning it. And again, make sure you give yourself some space to add some more details in between, like the leaves and the little daisy flowers we're gonna be adding too. So again, more C shapes. You can see it's not very tidy. It's pretty messy. So don't worry about messing it up. And more C shapes there. And I'm gonna do one more of these roses, and then I'm gonna leave it so I have room for the rest of my design elements. Again, very dry brush, you guys. So I'll show you all these. You guys see these here? They all look different, but not too different. But these are going to be our roses. Really loose, just C shapes going left and then mirrored on the right. Does that make sense, Em?
Yeah, totally.
Awesome. So now if you notice, guys, I did not put my brush in water. I still have the white on my brush. I'm just going to wipe it off on my paper towel. We're not going to put it in water. And now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to pick up some of my yellow ochre, just the tiniest bit. You may even need less of this color than you do of the white because you want it to be very subtle. So I'll show you how much I have on my brush. Like barely any. The white is still there on the bristles. Barely any of the yellow ochre. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to do this, and I'm going to do the exact same thing right over the C shapes we just made. Maybe a little bit more. And I'm also going to pick up some white sometimes to lighten it up. But again, make sure you don't have too much paint because you want it to be really, really light. If you feel like you've got too much yellow, put some more white in there and vice versa. You want it to be primarily white. We just want the yellow ochre to sort of be the shadows and add dimension to these white flowers. You want them to still be white roses when we're done though. Unless you want them to be yellow roses, in which case you can just use some more yellow ochre.
I love how loose this style of painting flowers is. It's like you're really painting with your heart. If you feel like you need more white, you add more white. If you feel like you need more of your color, add more of your color.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to do. It's a really, really, really easy technique. But one that I learned from my friend Kirsten.
They turn out always so pretty.
It's like the queen of like loose
floral.
Yeah. She's so good at that. Okay, so I'm going to keep doing this, adding a little bit of the yellow ochre. You can see I'm doing some C's like up and down too, so they're not just left and right anymore, to make sure I have a full rose. And see, that was too much yellow. So I'm going to wipe that off my brush and pick up some white and go back over that because that was way too much yellow for my liking.
And you're really just trying to make your flower look full, right?
Right. We're just doing little brush strokes all around the ones you've already made, just little C shapes or like little commas almost going in every direction around. Just these are kind of acting as our tiny little loose petals. Okay, you guys. So again, not putting my brush in water, just putting it to the side. You can see just kind of like little blobs of these brush strokes. I know that's not a very good descriptive word, but that's really all it is. Just nice and loose. I'm gonna make sure they stay fairly round. They still look like roses, but that is what our flowers look like as far as the roses go.
Cute. And Jess, before we move on, Kelly had a question. They wanted to know, how many roses do you think you have on your biggest pumpkin, on the blue one?
Oh, great question. Here I can kind of pull it in and show you. I don't know how many exactly, but there's quite a few. You know, there's maybe
8.
Yeah, I would say more, maybe 12 big ones, and then there's lots of little ones in between if you count all of the ones going all the way around.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to paint the little daisies. So again, I'm using the same brush. I'm just going to wipe it off my paper towel to get some of the excess paint off. And this time I'm going to start with the yellow ochre, and then we're going to go back over it with the white. So I'm going to pick up, let's actually mix these together because this is a little dark and I want it to be a little lighter. So I'm actually going to pick up 1 part white on my brush and 1 part yellow ochre, and I'm going to mix these together on my palette. And I'm gonna add a little more white. I wish I want something a little paler for this part. Okay, that looks good. So now I'm going to wipe off all that excess paint. Do not want all that in my brush. And what we're going to do for this one is we're going to almost paint stars. So I want it to be a nice dry brush, just like we've been doing. I don't want to, we're not, doing full coverage still, just a nice dry brush. And near my roses, I'm going to paint, like I said, little stars. So the points of the stars are going to be the petals of our daisy. So I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to do little stars coming out from the center. I would do, 5 or 6 or however many you can fit petals. See that?
Yep.
I'm going to continue doing that. Just, I like how they kind of accent the bigger roses. So I'm going to do them kind of near my larger roses for this pattern.
And just sometimes, at least for me, when I've painted pumpkins before, it's kind of tricky, and you get in your head about wanting to make sure that there's paint, inside those little grooves that the faux pumpkin naturally has. Are you so much worried about that?
No, I'm not, especially for something like this where it's really loose. You just don't need to worry about those little details.
Okay.
And again, I'm just doing little stars with the same brush all around, sort of accenting my larger rose flowers. Okay, you can see here there's a lot of variation, and that's okay. We're going to go back over these. So now again, I'm going to wipe off the excess paint from my brush. And I'm going to pick up some just solid yellow ochre. So not the mixture we made, but just the straight paint. And again, I want a nice dry brush. And I'm going to make the centers of each of the flowers. So this is going to be a quick little brush stroke in the center of each. So just one brush stroke right in the center, just to add a little dab of color. So a quick little brush stroke to be the center of our flowers. And you want it to be slightly darker than the petals, of course. That's why we're using the straight yellow ochre and not mixing it with white. Okay. Let's see, I'm going through a lot of paper towels here, but that's okay. I'll wipe off my brush again. Okay, so now to finish off our flowers, I'm going to pick up a little bit of white. And again, same brush, so it's going to have a little yellow in it, and that's okay. I'm going to pick up some white, and I'm going to wipe off that paint from my brush so I have a nice dry brush again, and I'm going to go back over these petals that we made on our daisies. So back over those, just one stroke. You don't have to go back and forth. You don't want full coverage. You want to see the yellow that we put under it before. We just want to add a stroke of white over that. How's everybody doing, Em?
Great, we're doing great.
Awesome.
We have a lot of people painting along with you today, which is always super exciting. I can feel the creative energy flowing in this class.
It. So let us know, guys. I'd love to hear if this is your first time, you know, joining a Michael's class with the Plaid team, or if you are a return customer, if you're here with us a lot during the week, let us know. I'd love to hear.
And I would love to know too, if any of you guys are switching up your color palette a little bit, if you're doing any pinks or purples or oranges, that's always fun to hear too.
Yeah. All right, so I'm coming up on my last couple of daisies here, adding my white. Okay, see guys, those are the daisies, and we're going to be going around those with our background color. But first, we're going to do our leaves. So I'm actually going to switch brushes now. So this is why I had a couple of different of the same size brush. So if you don't, just wash your brush and then make sure you just dry it really well. You can even stick in, get a hair dryer real quick and just make sure it's nice and dry, or just do your best to blot it as well as you can on your paper towel. But again, just for time's sake, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab a different brush that's already dry. So same brush, just a different one. And I'm going to pick up some of my wild wasabi, put that on my palette. And I'm also going to get some of my clover. Okay, so now I'm going to start painting the leaves around our flowers. So you can see here we have these really pretty green leaves that help to fill up our pattern. And this is where we really want to start filling in some of this negative space. So of course we'll have the blue, which will be pretty, but we want to have a really full pattern on our pumpkin. So I got my brush. I'm going to pick up some of my clover, which is the darker of our two greens. And again, I'm going to offload it. I don't want a ton of paint on my brush. And this is going to be just a really classic leaf shape. We're going to keep it very simple for this pattern. So kind of just like a football shape, like a lemon wedge, however you want to describe it, just a very classic leaf shape. And it's going to be coming out of our roses. So I'll do one right here coming out of this rose. Get a little more paint.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to fill it in. And you want to make sure you're always letting that black show through. That's why we're doing a dry brush, because we really like at the end, the black showing through is going to make it look really dramatic and kind of, vintage and distressed looking. So you just want to make sure you always have that black showing through. Continue making my leaves coming out of my roses.
And Jess, while you paint your leaves, you asked a question and our viewers definitely answered. We have a lot of new timers here, which is always super exciting. Thank you guys for joining us. If you enjoyed this style of class, what we're doing today, where Jessie is teaching some basic painting skills, and by the end of the class, you have a beautiful painted pumpkin, then make sure to tune into our Monday nights. We do a paint night every Monday night with Michael's at 8 p.m. Eastern time. And they're always super fun. One of our in-house artists at Plaid, like Andy Jones or Jessie, as you see here. I do some, Kirsten Jones, Chris Williams. It's always a super fun time. So if you love this class, make sure to check out our Monday night paint classes, as well as our weekly daytime classes. And also, of course, we have some regulars. We love seeing our regulars on here, and some, like I said, some people that are joining for the first time. So welcome everybody.
Yeah, I love that. Welcome guys. I'm so happy you're here. And all of you return people, it's really good to see you. Okay, so you can see here while Emma was chatting, I went around and I put all of my clover leaves, just kind of filling in some of the larger gaps in our pattern coming out from our roses. And I just wiped off the excess paint on my paper towel. And now I'm gonna do the same thing over those, but with my wild wasabi, which is this pretty pastel-y green. So I'm just gonna go right over that with this color. Again, don't want full coverage. I wanna see that clover color showing through, and I wanna see the black showing through. So that's why you wanna make sure You never have too much paint on your brush. So you can kind of see how that's looking, just really rough. Okay. So there we go. I've got wild wasabi on top of all of my clover leaves that we painted. So a couple of colors on each of the elements on our pumpkin right now. So now it's time to do the background. So this is a really fun part. It kind of reminds me of a coloring book, which is why I like it. It's kind of just mindless and relaxing. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to wipe the excess paint off my brush. Just make sure I don't have a ton of that green in there. And I'm going to put on my palette some of my Dutch Aqua, which is this really beautiful light blue color. And I'm also going to be using my Wicker white. So if you need more white on your palette, go ahead and add that now, but I already have some, so I'm not going to add any more just yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start painting like a textured pattern all around the background of our pumpkin. And what I mean by that is that I don't want it to be perfectly neat. You can see here, it's kind of just a little more interesting because it has some texture. And like I said, you really get that vintage distressed feel. So we're going to be doing lots of tiny brush strokes using both Dutch Aqua and Wicker white all around the background, just budding right up to the corners of our flowers to get this really pretty textured background. So you want to make sure it's not perfect. You want it to be really random and loose, and that's going to give you this look. Another thing to note while we're doing it is you never want to kind of outline each of your components that we've already painted, because we want to see that black. You want to have that really loose edge right up against all of these things you've painted. So you can kind of get that chalky, like blackboard look coming through. That's important to kind of achieve this style of painting. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick up some of my Dutch Aqua and take some of it off. I'm going to pick up a little bit of Wicker white too. And again, offloading it. And I'm going to start with just tiny little brush strokes all over my pumpkin. You can see here, I'm going in every direction. I'm never going in the same direction twice. I'm going all over the place, and I'm going to go right up till my flowers. I want to make sure I leave some of that black. I'm never going to outline my flowers. I want to keep doing this random little brush stroke pattern. And we're going to do this between all of the elements we've already painted to cover our whole pumpkin. And keep in mind, we are not trying to cover up all the black. The reason we painted it black first was that so we can see some of that shining through. So, you know, typically I think it's kind of like an instinct for people to just want to cover up the background of whatever they're painting. But for this one, we're going to do our best to try to leave some of that showing. Just try your best to get into the details, but if it's a little messy, that's okay, because don't forget, that's kind of the look we're going for. And don't forget, guys, you can see these other two pumpkins sitting here in front of me. Those are using the exact same elements that I'm teaching you guys for this larger one. You'll just do blue roses with green leaves and then do white and, you know, tan for your background instead. So always using the same colors, just kind of in a different order, different combination. So let us know too, guys. Have you guys already done some pumpkin crafting this year? I know a lot of you said you're painting along, which I love, but if you guys have done any more pumpkin crafting at home already, let us know. I'd love to hear what kind of pumpkins you guys have made.
Yeah, we've done a few really fun pumpkin classes with Michael's community classroom already this year, and we definitely have some more in store. So if you love this class and you have the pumpkin crafting bug, then make sure to look on Michael's community classroom page to see what other pumpkin classes we're doing this year.
Yeah. Again, guys, making sure my brush is pretty dry. There's not a ton of paint on it. Making sure I change my direction with every brush stroke so it's really loose and sort of choppy. Going right up to the edges of all my flowers, but not painting over them and not outlining them perfectly. And also, if you guys get ahead of me, if maybe your pumpkin is smaller, you can just do the exact same technique, the one we're doing for the back right now, just right up onto the stem. So you can see this one here. We just made the stem the same sort of technique we're doing on the rest of the background. So just so it sort of blends in.
And so Jessie, I see that you're like remixing your paint a lot. Are you worried about getting the exact same color blue each time you have to mix your white and your blue together?
No. So don't forget, we did not mix them together. I'm dipping my brush in
Okay.
blue and dipping my brush in white. So that the reason we're doing that, we're not mixing it ahead of time, is because you want it to be kind of random. You see how it's never the same exact shade anywhere. We like that choppy look because that's what makes the pattern look really loose and vintage. So I haven't mixed them ahead of time because I don't want just one color. I want lots of different blues going on in the background. So I'm dipping in white, I'm dipping in blue, I'm dipping in, where I offloaded my brush to get all these variations of blue. Great question.
And so Jessie, you want to hear what people are crafting at home?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm sorry if I say your name wrong. I believe it's Dianea, maybe. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. They are crafting yarn pumpkins and mini painted pumpkin topiaries.
Ooh, that sounds cute.
Peggy is putting beads on wire pumpkin frames, covering pumpkins with sweaters, using scrapbook paper on wooden pumpkins.
I love that. That sounds really fun.
Yeah, somebody else said that they're making yarn wrapped pumpkins and chunky sweater pumpkins. Adorable.
Love that. Sounds like sweaters and yarn are like kind of in this year.
Yeah. I think we're ready for some cooler weather. And we have two people who joined our Treasure Gold pumpkin class. That was a super fun one, Gail and Franny. So welcome back.
Oh, awesome. Very fun. We've got another pumpkin class coming up with Kirsten Jones, I believe next week, or maybe the week after actually. And she's going to be using Treasure Gold again for some more really fun, funky sort of eclectic pumpkins. So make sure to check that out. It is already listed on Michael's website. So make sure to sign up for that one because that's going to be a really fun one. Those are some of my favorite pumpkins that we've done here at Plaid this year, are the ones she'll be teaching you. So
yeah, they're very Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Okay.
They're very artsy. They look like they belong in a museum.
Yeah, they do. And she's using a lot of really fun, again, unexpected techniques. Kirsten is kind of the queen of that, of really unexpected but simple techniques.
That Kirsten, man, she is very creative.
She really is. Okay, you guys, you can see here, I'm coming to the end. I'm finishing up this background. And then once I've done this, there's one more element that I want to show you guys that we are going to include in our pattern. Just again, to keep making sure that our pumpkin is super duper full. And then we will be done. Okay, you can do the bottom too if you want, but you really won't see much of this when it's sitting down. So kind of up to you. And again, like I said, you want to do the stem as well. We're kind of coming into that territory that Emma mentioned earlier where the whole thing's wet now and I don't know where to pick it up. Okay. All right, so now, as you can see here, we have our really pretty, on our final pumpkin, our really pretty leaves that we painted ahead of time. And then we added a little extra greenery on top just for more detail, just for another layer of detail. So I'm going to use the same brush and I'm going to wipe off the excess paint. And I'm going to pick up some of the wasabi, the wild wasabi on my brush. And I'm just going to do little dabs of color going around my daisies, just to be like kind of extra greenery, as if this was like a bouquet or a garden or something, just little bits of greenery poking out. So I'll show you what I mean. So just little dabs right here. And then really one thing real quick. I'm going to pick up some white and dab that onto it as well. So I'll show you what that looks like. You see just more green coming out.
That's what I was going to ask you, to hold it up a little closer.
There you go, perfect. So I'm going to continue doing this. You can even add a little bit of clover if you want it to be a little darker. And then a little bit more white. Just some more green, like I said, just a little bit more detail. All right, guys. So again, for all of these flowers and details you painted, you can add as many or as few as you want to your pumpkins. You can make a really full pattern or more of a sparse pattern. Whatever colors you decide to use, it's totally up to you. But don't forget, guys, we are here every Monday night for Paint Night Live to teach you how to paint a full painting in just about an hour. And then we usually have between 1 and 2 craft classes per week, and we will be doing pumpkins for several more weeks. So make sure to check those out. If you decide to craft along with us, or you decide to post your projects on social media, please make sure to hashtag Plaid Crafts and make it with Michaels, because we love to see what you guys are making. And we will see you next time. Bye.